Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Flying with Friends, the first 50 years. Today I want to tell you about my initial flight instructor, Tom Forsyth, very influential guy in my life. And then he introduced me to another guy by the name of Brian Shull, who has also played a big part in my development as a Air Force fighter pilot and then later on just as a regular pilot. So this episode probably in sequence probably should be like episode number 2, just because, well, Tom was my first flight instructor, and from the beginning, his influence was always there. So Tom Forsyth, retired Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force guy, based at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, where he retired after a career in the United States Air Force. He joined the Army Air Corps during World War II, and as near as I can tell, he joined on his 18th birthday. He was very young. The war was raging in Europe, well, all over the world, and he became an aviation cadet. He went through training, which is pretty grueling. He became a navigator on a bomber, and then boom, the war's over. So after the war, he was able to get a pilot training slot and go on to become a pilot. And then, as he's going through these different airplanes, here comes the jet age, and he's perfectly positioned for that. So he becomes an Air Force jet fighter pilot, and his resume has all of the first kind of generation of everything. You know, he was going through at one base, and then they'd upgrade to the next version of that jet. And so he's there for the beginning of all this, but he's still kind of missing out on Korea and Vietnam. And as his career is, he's going through airplanes and ranks and positions, he ends up at Keesler Air Force Base. The Vietnam War is winding down. His career is winding down. He's the base operations officer as his last job, and he retires as a lieutenant colonel, wants to keep flying. He joins the Aero Club as a flight instructor, and that's where our paths cross, where he was my first flight instructor. And, you know, I think about it, and I actually had very little contact with this guy. You know, we were in the airplane together, working on steep turns and stalls and landing patterns and things like that. So he was right here, but I had very little what I'd call face-to-face time with him. But here he is, he's influencing my life in a big way. And I reflect on this, like the power that he had, the words, and how he just very succinctly got me going on this piloting career. And you know, I look back on my logbook. I flew 4 flights, kind of on Saturday to Saturday to Saturday. And then he grabbed me and he says, "Hey, what are you doing? Why aren't you, you know, where are you going?" And he set me on this path to become an Air Force fighter pilot. So after 4 flights, I quit flying, and I went to ground school. I got all this stuff done. I started saving money, so that when I came back several months later, I was ready to rock and roll. So I've got 4 flights in my logbook, 4 more flights, and he solos me. A month later, I'm a private pilot, and I'm moving on to my first assignment as a young Air Force radar maintenance technician. And so in that time, Tom really exerted some powerful influence on me. And um, as my good friend Chip Long says, he says, "You're always an example to everybody all the time. You might be a good example, you might be a bad example, but you're always an example." And I think that these things influence me heavily all the time to be, you know, as best I can, a good example. And to me now, especially as a flight instructor, I think about the influence that I might have on my students like Tom had on me. So I guess to try to summarize the thing with Tom is doggone it, I am so grateful that he was the guy. He was my primary instructor, got me going, set me up for this path to become an Air Force fighter pilot. And so that was the initial stage. My first assignment coming out of tech school was Myrtle Beach Air Force Base, South Carolina, which at the time had A-7s, but they were already slated to become the first operational base for the A-10, which was going through development and production delivery, all that kind of stuff. So as I'm leaving Keesler, heading up to South Carolina, Tom tells me, when you get there, call this guy, Brian Shull. He would love to talk to you. So I'm a young, no striper airman kind of a kid. And the idea of me calling a captain, a fighter pilot, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So I get to Myrtle Beach, I settle in, I meet my boss, and and thankfully my workshop where I work is literally right on the flight line, looking out over all the airplanes there. And somehow I get the courage to look in the phone book. I find his name, I think he was a captain at the time, Brian Shull. And I call him up, hey, Captain Shull, hi, Michael Hare, Tom Forsyth told me to call. And he's like, oh, wow, Mike, I'm so glad. Thank you for calling. And let's get together. Let's have a hamburger. Let's talk. And I'm like blown away by his just friendly nature. I go, holy cow, wow. So over the remaining time that I have at Myrtle Beach, I meet with Brian on several occasions. And so I would encourage you, just Google Brian Shull, S-H-U-L. Read his story. It's more than I can put into a little video here. But again, the thing that I really want to convey to you is, in a very short time, the influence that Brian had on me. And so I knew him a little bit at Myrtle Beach. I went overseas to Spangdahlem for a couple of years. I came back. I had a break in service. I went to officer training school. I went to pilot training. I'm selected to go to the A-10. So now I'm out in Arizona as a basic A-10 guy. And here comes the T-38s from Holloman, the fighter lead-in guys, coming to Tucson to be our dissimilar adversary guys. And guess who's there? Brian Shull. And now he's a major and he's moving up in the ranks. He's their chief air-to-ground guy. But here he is at Tucson flying air-to-air against the A-10, which is phenomenal. So I get a chance to meet him again. And actually some off-duty time, we played some racquetball together. And again, he's influencing me. Maybe not direct sitting down word on word, hey, you got to do this, but just his actions, his camaraderie, his friendship. He welcomed me. I felt almost like a little brother to this guy. And so the word here for this session, this episode of Flying with Friends is be ready to be influenced. When you get close to one of these guys, listen to them, feel what they're saying, hear what they're saying. They're there for you. And if you get into a position like me where I'm a flight instructor, this is the hard part. Be careful what you say, because people are looking up to you and they want to hear what you say. So say the right thing, be gentle, be wise. And thankfully for me in my life, today we're talking about Tom Forsyth and Brian Shull. We're going to have other episodes about other, I call them angels, that came to me in my progression that influenced me and helped shape me. And I think now looking back on this, I have this enormous sense of gratitude that these people came into my life, when they did, how they did, and wow, I'm just super lucky. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for being here and tuning in, and I hope to have some more exciting and interesting new episodes for you on Flying with Friends, the first 50 years. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.